Today, we will be looking at the film The Thing, released in 1982. The movie begins with a spaceship flying through space as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, landing in Antarctica. We see a helicopter flying above the snow, with a man leaning out the door as if he is looking for something. The chopper continues to fly across the barren land until a man spots a dog racing across the snow. The dog looks back to observe the helicopter and continues to run at full speed in the other direction. The man then leans out the door and pulls out a large rifle. He shoots at the dog, but doesn't seem to hit it. The chopper takes several flyovers, but misses each time. Elsewhere, we see a small team of people, all relaxing in a nearby Arctic village, playing ping pong and other games as time passes by, as normal. A man named R.J. McCready is playing chess against an AI computer, and when he loses, he pours his drink onto the hardware in anger. Eventually, the dog rushes up to the village with the helicopter behind it. McCready notices the helicopter circling the town and rushes out to meet them, along with the rest of the camp. To their shock, the helicopter then begins throwing grenades out the side door in an attempt to kill the running dog. When they rush up to greet the helicopter, the pilot of the plane accidentally drops one of his grenades behind him, blowing up both the helicopter and himself in the process. The other Norwegian man begins to shout in another language, upset that the dog has escaped and seems to be playing with the men. He shoots at the dog and accidentally hits one of the men in the leg and rushes after the fleeing dog. Seeing his men in danger, another man from inside pulls out a small handgun and shoots the Norwegian man dead. Others rush over to the helicopter to check on it and douse it with a fire extinguisher. Meanwhile, another man approaches the dog to see if he is okay, which he is. The man who was hit with the gunshot injury in the leg is then stitched up in the medical center as he questions with the doctor what just happened. Why was the helicopter flying so low and attacking an animal? Elsewhere, the others try to radio the mainland so they can report the death of the helicopter pilots. Unfortunately, all communications are dead from the bad weather and the remote location. Elsewhere, McCready and the others all decide to head up to the Norwegian camp to see what caused them to go insane. Although reluctant at first due to the bad weather, they jump in a helicopter and decide to move out. Meanwhile, the camera pans over the dog mysteriously. That night, everything proceeds as normal while the crew goes about their business as normal. Quietly, the dog moves through the hallway, entering the room of a mysterious crew member who we only see their shadow on the wall. At the Norwegian base, McCready approaches in his helicopter and sees the entire place in ruin. Half the buildings have been burnt to the ground while smoke billows from the rooftop. They exit the helicopter and begin to explore the ruins, calling out to anyone that might still be alive. As they continue to explore the burnt-down buildings, they find blood on the ground and the body of a man who had slit his wrists and deeply cut his own throat. A gruesome way to go. They continue to check the other rooms, where McCready stumbles across a large bed of ice that looks to be in the shape of a coffin. They aren't sure what it is, but comment on how strange it is. Outside, they then find a pile of bodies all burnt to a crisp. Bones are sticking out of the wreckage, but they aren't sure what kind of animal it is. Back at the American camp, the helicopter returns while the dog looks on from a window. They remove a sheet to then show a hideous monstrosity that they recovered from the Norwegian camp. It looks to be some kind of mutant monster, with human limbs growing off of it and bloody body parts protruding from all angles. Again, the dog watches from the side. They quickly begin an autopsy and start to slice up the corpse of the disgusting creature. They pull out what appear to be human organs, including a heart, lungs, and intestines. They then pan over the creature's face, as it appears to be two human heads fused together in a hideous monstrosity. That evening, the crew members sit around a table, smoking and drinking. Annoyed by the dog, they take the husky and throw him in a cage with other sleeping dogs. Once alone, the other dogs begin to growl and freak out at the animal. Shockingly, the dog's face then splits open in a pool of blood as tentacles protrude from its body and insect legs grow from its back. The dogs attempt to bite their way out of the cage, and it shoots a strange liquid at the other dogs. When one of the crew members comes over to examine what is causing the loud racket, he opens the door to find several other dogs race out of the room and the mutant creature. He slams the door shut until McCready hears the commotion and pulls the fire alarm. Everyone grabs their weapons and heads over to the dog cage. Bringing a flamethrower, they all gather at the dog shed to find a freakish dog-like creature screaming at them. A long tentacle shoots out and wraps around an injured dog, while another one is choked in the corner. More freakish claws begin to extend from the creature's body as it breaks through the ceiling and attempts to escape. Eyeballs then open on the creature in a freakish display until they light it on fire with their flamethrowers. The next day, they do an autopsy of the body of the giant dog monster. Cutting it open, they find all kinds of alien features within. To their shock, the doctor then explains that the creature is able to imitate other creatures and was attempting to absorb the canines and replicate them. They then look at each other, unsure of what to make of this. Later, the group of them begins to review camera footage to see if they can find any clues as to what happened. Through the video footage, they see the Norwegians blow a hole in the ground at a remote excavation site. Jumping in the helicopter, McCready and the others set out to explore the site and uncover clues. To their shock, it looks to be a giant alien spacecraft that landed in the snow. It is huge in size, and they question how long it had been buried in the ice. They speculate that the ship had been in the snow for at least 100,000 years. They also conclude that the creature they found was taken from the ice too. Back at the camp, the others are upset by what they have found, and some people don't believe it. They continue to discuss what might have happened until they later use their AI computer to analyze the cells of the creature. It shows that the creature cells eat the cells of the animal, imitate it, and then continue to consume cells like a predator as it grows in size. The doctor notes all of this, while the AI concludes that there is a 75% chance that one member of the camp is likely an imposter. If the intruder is allowed to escape, it is highly likely the entire planet is doomed. He then grabs his gun and sets out. Elsewhere, two crew members are moving the bloody body of the alien corpse. After moving it to the storage room, they don't notice when it slowly begins to move. Without anyone seeing, a small tentacle begins to drop from the side of the table while dripping blood. Outside, McCready is speaking privately with another member of the crew. Reading through the journal of the doctor, they realize that the creature might not be dead yet. Back in the storage room, another member of the crew looks over and sees that his friend is currently being eaten in the corner of the room. Covered in blood and mucus, tentacles have wrapped him up and killed him. McCready and others rush into the room and see that Bennett, the man who was being eaten, has broken out through a window and is trying to escape in the snow. Surrounding him, Bennett then looks up at the group and begins to loudly shout in an alien noise. His arms are mutant growths, and they kick over a barrel of oil and light him on fire. They speculate that if they waited longer, Bennett would have looked and sounded like a normal human. Without any of them knowing, they then grab the rest of the monster corpses and douse them in oil, lighting them on fire. They watch the flames burn through the corpses, noticing that a member of their crew, named Blair, seems to be missing. Nobody can seem to find him either. As McCready is heading inside, he notices someone holding a large fire axe rushing away from his helicopter. When he lights a flashlight to see what happened, he finds that his helicopter has been wrecked beyond repair. Hearing a gunshot, he rushes inside. He finds the rest of the crew surrounding Blair as he freaks out and begins breaking their machinery. Apparently, he killed all the dogs and sabotaged all the machinery. The entire time, he is ranting about the alien and how it wants to kill them all. They rush in and tackle him to the floor, subduing him before he can hurt anyone else. Meanwhile, another crew member looks on in horror when he finds the rest of the dogs have been killed. They lock Blair in the tool shed, claiming it is for his own protection. He speaks alone with McCready, explaining that he doesn't know who he can trust. Before he leaves, Blair tells him to watch a man named Clark. McCready doesn't answer as he exits the shack. Back outside, they comment that they are now totally cut off and have to wait until the next season. Unfortunately, they know that one of them is an imitation. The doctor then comments that they can do blood tests on each of them to check if they are human. If the blood shows a reaction, it obviously wouldn't be human. To their shock, they find that all the stores of blood have been destroyed. Clearly, one of the creatures sabotaged their only means of testing. When panic begins to set in, the crew member named Windows panics and rushes out of the room. He grabs a rifle, but the others convince him to drop his weapon and settle down. The group decides that they need to put someone in charge. The group decides that they should look to MacReady. As they burn the remains of the others, they comment that some of them are clearly still human. If they were all monsters, they would all just attack whoever was left and overwhelm them. The whole time this is happening, MacReady secretly tapes a message to anyone who might find it. If they all die, then hopefully someone in the future will stand a fighting chance. That night, one of the crew members notices something suspicious and rushes outside to check what was happening. He finds the coat of MacReady in the snow, half torn to shreds. Meanwhile, rest of the camp moves around the camp in search of their missing crew members. They check on Blair in his shed as he begs for them to come back inside. He promises he won't hurt anyone, but MacReady shuts the door in his face. One of the other groups then finds the torn clothing and broken glasses of their friend Fuchs. The remains seem to show that Fuchs burnt himself alive to avoid being eaten by the creature. While this is happening, a small group of the crew remains inside and begins barricading the door. They look out the window and find one of the crew members stumbling back to the building. When he gets inside, he reveals that he found the torn clothing of MacReady on the ground and managed to sneak away from him while they were outside. All evidence now points to MacReady being a monster. They all begin to fight amongst themselves, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, they hear a window break as someone has managed to climb inside. MacReady has managed to get back in, and he holds a flare-up to a batch of dynamite in a threat to the group. If anyone attacks him, he will blow the entire building to pieces. One of them eventually attacks MacReady, and a scuffle ensues. In the fight, the doctor falls to the ground in what appears to be a heart attack. When they examine him closer, he seems to be dead. They start to perform CPR on him and push on his chest to get his heart beating. When they bring over electric paddles to save his life, they are shocked when his chest splits open like a mouth, and large teeth bite down on the man's hands and rip him to pieces. The dead doctor then suddenly begins to spew slime from his chest as a freakish monster crawls out from his chest with large spider-like legs. His head also rips off from his body and falls to the floor in an attempt to escape. He uses his tongue like a grappling hook and drags himself away. Then, spider-like limbs protrude from his body as he tries to rush away. Unfortunately for the creature, the others notice it before it can escape. They turn the flamethrower on it and kill it before it can leave. After the ordeal, MacReady decides that they all should be tied up with rope so they can be tested. The idea is to draw a bit of everyone's blood. They are then going to electrocute the blood and see if it reacts, after concluding that each part of the creature seems to act independently when provoked. First testing the crew member Knowles, he comes up clean. They then move on to Windows, who is also clean. Third on the list is MacReady himself, who tests his blood and comes up clean. Moving to the bodies of some of their dead friends, they also come up clean. Eventually, they get to their crew member Palmer. When they test his blood, it screeches loudly and flies into the air. Upon seeing this, Palmer then freakishly transforms and breaks free from his bondage. His head splits open, and he grabs one of the other crew members, ripping him to pieces in the process. Eventually, MacReady manages to light him on fire with his flamethrower. The creature then rushes outside, where it dies in the snow. Meanwhile, the half-dead corpse of their friend, who was just attacked by the creature, is groaning and mutating in the corner. They light him on fire as well to keep him from transforming. It seems that even just a small touch from one of the creatures will infect you, and its cells will take you over. They then continue testing the others and find that everyone in the room is human. They then decide that they need to check on Blair, who was alone in the shed. When they arrive, he seems to be missing, as they find he had broken through the floor and crawled out through a large tunnel in the ground. The tunnel leads to a small opening with what looks to be an attempted spaceship. Apparently, Blair is an alien and was trying to escape with a ship he built from helicopter parts. Later, they notice one of their friends named Childs roaming around outside. As soon as they comment on it, the electricity blows out. Realizing what this means, the thing has decided that it is better off to freeze with the others. It can then thaw out in the spring and make its escape while everyone is dead. Not about to allow this to happen, the group lights the entire place on fire. They burn every single building to pieces and wreck the entire camp. Upon further exploration, they eventually stumble across a cavern underneath one of the buildings near the generator room. The three of them begin to explore room, noting that the generator wasn't destroyed, but is entirely gone. MacReady then decides that they need to blow the entire place to pieces using an explosive. They split up to perform their individual tasks and plant the explosives around the camp underground. Unfortunately, Blair suddenly appears from nowhere and grabs one of them by the face. He covers his hand over his face, dragging his corpse away. When Knowles sees this, he silently follows him to check. Suddenly, MacReady realizes he is all alone. Nobody is answering him when he calls out, and he presumes them all dead. To his surprise, a creature begins moving quickly underground. It attacks MacReady and then bursts through the floor to grab the bomb. A huge creature that looks to be a huge mutated combination of several dogs then bursts from the ground. MacReady grabs some dynamite and flings it at the creature, blowing it to pieces. Checking the wreckage when he is done, MacReady stumbles away where he is approached by Childs. Childs explains that he tried following Blair and got lost in the storm. The two of them comment that neither of them is going to survive for long in the freezing cold. Without any other option, we aren't sure if Childs is a human or not. The two of them then have a drink from a bottle of alcohol and quietly die in the snow. The movie then ends, unsure of whether the creature managed to survive or not. Thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out when you do that. And of course, check out the other videos if you like watching recaps.